Widow Yulia is due to address the European Parliament in Strasbourg shortly. She has emerged as the face of Russia's embattled opposition movement, which has been largely silenced by Vladimir Putin's government. Yulia Navalnaya says that she will continue her husband's work to topple the Kremlin's monopoly on power and build a free Russia.
In the days following Alexei Navalny's death, Yulia Navalnaya seemed to be everywhere, meeting top European officials who reaffirmed their support for the Russian opposition. Then, in a video message, she addressed the world with an accusation and a promise.
By killing Alexei, Putin killed half of me, half of my heart, and half of my soul. But I still have the other half, and it tells me that I have no right to give up. I will continue the work of Alexei Navalny, continue to fight for our country, and I encourage you to stand next to me.
It wasn't always this way. Born in Moscow, Yulia Navalnaya trained as an economist and worked at a bank before she married Alexei Navalny in 2000. She eventually stopped working, announcing that she was a wife and mother first. But her life became very public. She became a fierce defender of her husband and his anti-corruption work, like when Navalny was sentenced to prison in 2013, a day after announcing he would run for mayor of Moscow.
Alexei was as ready for this as possible, and I and all our family will keep supporting him. If anybody hopes that Alexei's investigations will stop, they're mistaken.
As Navalny went in and out of jail, challenging the Kremlin's grip on power, the couple's profile grew. In 2020, Navalny was poisoned, and Yulia led a pressure campaign to allow him to be treated outside of Russia in a German hospital. Navalny thanked Yulia for saving him. When he returned to Russia in 2021, police arrested Navalny and detained Yulia Navalnaya, separating the couple for good. She became a frequent media figure, appearing at his court hearings and encouraging people to vote in elections, even if it seemed like the outcome was predetermined. Navalny's death earlier this month put Yulia Navalnaya back in the spotlight. Instead of going to visit her children, she went to the security conference in Munich, insisting it's what her husband would have done, continuing the struggle for a free Russia.
And for more, we are joined by DW Riga Bureau Chief Yuri Resheto. He reports from Latvia since Moscow banned DW from operating inside Russia. Why is Yulia Navalnaya speaking to the European Parliament today? What does she want to achieve?
Well, the European Parliament is reportedly expected to pass a resolution today in connection with, as Navalny's supporters say, the murder of Alexei Navalny. They are convinced that the opposition politician didn't die a natural death but was killed. This resolution should also call for all necessary measures to be taken to support political prisoners and repressed civil society in Russia. We don't know how far such measures should go, but that is, so to speak, the formal part today. In fact, it's more about Navalny himself, and that's where his wife's speech comes in. I think the EU politicians want to pay their last respects to Alexei Navalny and, let's say, immortalize the name of the Russian opposition politician as a fighter for freedom and democracy. So today it's a very symbolic gesture to pay tribute to Navalny at European level, especially considering the difficult circumstances of his upcoming funeral in his native Russia. So the politician will therefore be publicly commemorated today, at least at EU level.
Is it fair to say that since her husband's death, she has replaced him now as Russia's main opposition figure?
Well, Yulia Navalnaya's appearance on the political stage came as a surprise to many, to be honest. We remember that you've said it, Sarah, just a few minutes after her husband's death, she spoke at the Munich Security Conference the Friday before last and announced that she wanted to follow in her husband's footsteps, so to say. That is a big announcement, and there are those who believe that Russia could do with something just like her, a clever, charismatic, and above all, courageous woman who can give the divided Russian opposition a completely new structure and style with her protest. Of course, she has one major problem, and that problem is that she is completely unknown as a politician. And yes, she doesn't live in Russia either. Well, you could say that most Russian opposition figures no longer live in Russia. And yes, they all have this problem of credibility. This is precisely why Alexei Navalny returned to Russia after his poisoning. As a Russian politician, he wanted to be close to the Russian people. He wanted to travel on the same subway in Moscow as the others, and he wanted to be very close to his voters. So it's very doubtful whether Yulia Navalnaya can achieve all this, but at least she is already giving the Russian opposition a face and a voice, and says after the death of her husband, the Russian opposition is not dead.
How does Russia react to all of this?
Well, I think it is the fact Russia has not yet reacted officially. I don't think there will be any official comments from the Kremlin either. President Vladimir Putin has been known for years not to mention Navalny's name and to play down his importance as a politician as much as possible. For critically minded Russians, Navalny's appearance today is, of course, a powerful symbol for everyone in Russia who still believes in Europe, in the EU. I say that, Sarah, because there are many people in Russia who, under the impression of the Russian state media and their hate-filled reports about Europe, identify the EU with the devil and believe that Europe wants Russia's collapse. So, for those who still believe in Europe, it will, of course, be a great gesture of recognition not only for Alexei or Yulia Navalnaya personally, but for all those Russians who are persecuted and punished for their critical opinions.
Yuri, you mentioned Navalny's funeral, which will be held in Moscow on Friday. Can you tell us any more details about that? What exactly is being expected?
Well, as far as we know, Navalny's press secretary Kira Yarmysh said just a few minutes ago that the church funeral would take place in a church in the Moscow suburb of Marino. It should be said that Alexei Navalny was, according to his own words, a religious man and confessed to being a Russian Orthodox Christian. The ceremony is scheduled to take place on Friday at noon, at 2 o'clock Moscow time. The opposition politician is to be buried after the church ceremony at a cemetery. At first, it was said that Navalny would be buried tomorrow, on Thursday, but on that day, no one could be found in Moscow to prepare Navalny's grave, according to at least one of his colleagues. This colleague also said or suspected that this was because President Vladimir Putin will give his speech to the nation tomorrow on Thursday. Navalny's colleagues actually wanted to find a large hall where Navalny's memorial ceremony could take place so that as many people as possible could say final farewell to him. However, they were reportedly ordered by the authorities to hold the funeral in a rather small circle, the same that Navalny's mother was told in the prisoner colony in Salehard a few days ago. We don't yet know how small this circle finally will be and whether Navalny's funeral will receive maybe much more attention. We will see that exactly on Friday if it happens.
Yuri Roshetto, DW Riga Bureau Chief, thank you. For more, let's cross to Bernd Rieger, DW correspondent at the European Parliament in Strasbourg. So, Bernd, Navalnaya steps up to a new role after her husband's death. How is she being received there in Strasbourg?
With a lot of respect, of course. After all, she's a mourning widow, lost her husband after 24 years of marriage, and with a lot of respect for her brave commitment to continue the work of her husband, and that is what the deputies expect from her today, and a little bit of an explanation of an outlook, what is she going to do. And it will also be a memorial of Alexei Navalny, of course, and as we speak the deputies are now gathering here in the hemicycle, in the plenary. First, Roberta Metsola, the president of the parliament will address the chamber and say a few words about the life and death of Alexei Navalny. Metsola said all along that the Russian authorities, that Mr. Putin took away first the freedom and then the life of Alexei Navalny. She stopped short of saying that Putin, the president of Russia, actually murdered or ordered the murder of Navalny. That can maybe be done in a resolution that is later here on the agenda. And Mrs. Navalny can expect support and also maybe some money for her foundation in the future.
Navalnaya is calling for the EU to increase sanctions against Russia. Is that likely to happen?
Well, that is rather difficult because there are already 13 rounds of sanctions in place, also sanctions against Vladimir Putin personally. The parliament, the overwhelming majority here of the deputies will support this demand and say we need more sanctions, but the other institutions in Brussels, the Commission and the Council, the member states, are a little bit more reluctant to widen the sanctions yet again. But as soon as it is clear who actually is responsible for the death of Alexei Navalny personally, if they can find perpetrators or people that are very closely involved, then they could sanction these persons personally, but no sanctions against businesses or sectors in Russia are planned as of now.
European lawmakers will later debate Navalny's death. What exactly are we expecting?
Well, this afternoon, the Parliament will discuss a resolution not only about the death of Alexei Navalny, but also about the stance towards Russia in general. Russia is regarded now as an enemy here, not as a partner anymore, but as it used to be a couple of years ago. It will be a very harsh criticism of Russia and also a harsh criticism in the run-up to the elections in Russia, a criticism of Vladimir Putin, and a call, of course, for more sanctions from the parliament. That will be in this resolution, which will be voted upon tomorrow.
Okay, Bernd, we just want to let our viewers know you're looking at a standing ovation there in the European Parliament. Looks like Roberta Metsola is going to introduce right now Yulia Navalnaya, who we understand will be giving a speech to the European Parliament.
Members,
let's listen in.
Dear colleagues, we gather here today to pay tribute to Alexei Navalny in the presence of his brave wife, Yulia Navalnaya. Dear Yulia, thank you for your readiness to speak in this chamber to the world in such painful circumstances. It is truly an honour to welcome you to the European Parliament. Before we begin, I would like to invite everyone to turn their attention to the screens to watch a short video about the life and legacy of Alexei Navalny.
Il coraggio che ha dimostrato Alexei desta stupore e ammirazione. Lo hanno minacciato, maltrattato, avvelenato, arrestato, incarcerato, ma non sono riusciti a metterlo a tacere. Ha lottato instancabilmente per il popolo russo.
Jailed opposition politician and Sakharov Prize laureate Alexei Navalny's condition remains of deep concern, with journalists reporting it as critical. So from here, on behalf of the European Parliament, let me once again call for his immediate and unconditional release. Dear Yulia, dear colleagues, on the 16th of February we received the tragic news of Sakharov Prize laureate Alexei Navalny's death. For many in Russia and outside, he represented hope. Hope in better days, hope in a free Russia, hope in the future. Hope that courage can overcome. And while his killers sought to cruelly extinguish that hope, they failed. The hope he represented remains as bright as ever. This House and its members condemn his killing in the strongest possible terms. It is a crime that deserves an international and independent investigation. The world is owed justice. While we pay tribute to his memory, I want to express our deepest condolences to you, dear Yulia, to your children, Daria and Zahar, to Alexei's parents, Lyudmila and Anatoly, to his family, friends and countless supporters in Russia and across the globe. Alexei Navalny dedicated his life to the fight against corruption and for a democratic Russia. He did not give up when they tried to poison him. He did not give up when he was unjustly imprisoned. He did not give up when his sentence was extended in a sham trial. He did not give up even when confronted with suffering and injustice. And neither must we. Democracy takes bravery, and Alexei understood that. That is why he went back to Russia in 2021. That is why he could not be broken. And that is exactly what made the regime so afraid of him. But Alexei's fight endures. The many brave people who took to the streets of Russia after his death shows, yet again, the fragility of authoritarianism. I take solace in that fact that if history teaches us anything, it is that the pillars of autocracy, in the end, always crumble under the weight of its own corruption and people's inherent desire to live freely. And when they inevitably do, it will be thanks to what Alexei and your family did. So, dear Yulia, on behalf of the European Parliament that stands in admiration of your courage, I thank you, and the floor is yours.
Dear Madam President, dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to hear me today. After Putin tried to kill Alexei for the first time, we lived in southern Germany for several months. Alexei was recovering from the poisoning, learning how to walk and try it all over again. We walked a lot, sometimes going on short trips. One of them, we went to Strasbourg with our children. It is one of my and Alexei's favorite cities. We have been there several times together, and then 3 years ago, we decided to show it to them. Now my husband is dead. I'm back to Strasbourg, but I'm no longer walking around with my family. I stay here and address you and in your person the whole Europe. I thought that in 12 days since Alexei's murder, I would have time to prepare for this speech. But first we spent a week getting Alexei's body and organizing funeral. Then I chose the cemetery and coffin. The funeral will take place the day after tomorrow. And I'm not sure yet whether it will be peaceful or whether police will arrest those who have come to say goodbye to my husband. Thank you. However, I'm standing here because your voters have an important question. They are asking you about it, and then you're asking me. The question is, how can I help you in your fight? Last Saturday was 2 years since Putin started a full-scale war against Ukraine, a brutal and sneaky war. The whole world rushed to Ukraine's aid, but 2 years passed. There is much exhaustion, much blood, much disappointment, and Putin has gone nowhere. Everything has already been used. Weapons, money, sanctions, nothing is working. And the worst has happened. Everyone got used to the war. Here and there people start to say, well, we'll have to come to an agreement with Putin anyway. And then Putin killed my husband, Alexei Navalny. On his orders, Alexei was tortured for 3 years. He was starved in a tiny stone cell, cut off from the outside world and denied visits, phone calls, and then even letters. And then they killed him. Even after that, they abused his body and abused his mother. On the one hand, the public murder has once again showed everyone that Putin is capable of anything and that you cannot negotiate with him. But on the thank you. But on the other side, I can also see how shocked everyone is. Many people have the feeling that Putin cannot be defeated at all. And in this desperation, they are now asking me, how can I help you? And I'm thinking about how Alexei would answer this question. I will try answer, but to do so, I have to tell you a little about what he was like. Alexei was an inventor. He always had new ideas for everything, but especially in politics. You have elections at the beginning of June. Many of you will be campaigning, meeting voters, giving interviews, shooting commercials. Now imagine that all of this is impossible. No TV station will do an interview with you. No money in the world can help you with the commercial. And the voters who came to the meetings will be arrested along with the candidate. Welcome to Putin's Russia. And yet, Alexei Navalny has managed to become the most famous politician there. He was able to inspire millions of people with his ideas. How did he do that? He was always fantasizing and experimenting. You are not allowed on TV. Let's learn how to make YouTube videos so the whole country can watch them. You are not allowed to vote. You can come up with a tactical voting strategy to take seats away from the ruling party. Even in Putin's gulag, Alexei managed to pass on ideas for projects that would make the Kremlin panic. He was the opposite of everything boring. This is the answer to the question. If you really want to defeat Putin, you have to become an innovator. You have to stop being boring. You cannot hurt Putin with another resolution or another set of sanctions. That is no different from the previous ones. You cannot defeat him by thinking he is a man of principle who has morals and rules. He is not like that, and Alexei realized that a long time ago. You are not dealing with a politician, but with a bloody monster. Putin is the leader of an organized criminal gang. Putin is the leader of... Thank you. And it's good to repeat it again. Putin is the leader of organized criminal gang. This includes poisoners and assassins, but they are just puppets. The most important thing is the people close to Putin, his friends, associates, and keepers of mafia money. You and all of us must fight the criminal gang, and the political innovation here is to apply the methods of fighting organized crime, not political competition. Not diplomatic notes, but investigations into the financial machinations, not statements of concern, but a search of mafia associates in your countries for discreet lawyers and financiers who are helping Putin and his friends to hide money. In this fight, you have reliable allies. There are tens of millions of Russians who are against war, against Putin, against the evil he brings. We must not persecute them. On the contrary, you must work with them, with us. Putin must answer for what he has done with my country. Putin must answer for what he has done to a neighboring peaceful country. And Putin must answer for everything he has done to Alexei. My husband will never see what the beautiful Russia of the future will look like. But we must see it. And I will do... And I will do my best to make his dream come true. The evil will fall, and the beautiful future will come. Thank you.
joined us. You're watching
Thank
DW
you.
News, and we're listening to a speech to the European Parliament in Strasbourg by Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of the recently deceased Russian opposition politician Alexei Navalny.
Thank you very much, Ms. Navalnaya, for that powerful statement. Now we will have a round of speakers from all political groups, starting with the President of the
for
group.
a little bit of insight into what Yulia Navalnaya said there, let's cross to our correspondent in Strasbourg, Bernd Riegert, and also to DW Riga Bureau Chief Yuri Resheto, who's standing by there. Bernd, let's start with you. Just sum it up for us. What did Yulia Navalnaya say? What was her central message?
Well, she received lots of applause of honor from the parliament, that she was speaking here as a guest of honor. That happens only to prime ministers usually. The parliament paid respect to her and also to the work of her husband, Alexei Navalny. Mrs. Navalnaya said that Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, is, and I quote here, a bloody monster. Putin is the leader of a criminal gang, and this gang has to be brought down. And she appealed to the European Union to help her in that fight, not only to target Putin with sanctions, but to target the organized crime and the criminal gang around him with sanctions and all means that are applicable in that circumstance. And she said that the dream of her husband, this long-time opponent of Putin, has to come true and will come true in the end. A very moving speech by a widow that pledged to continue the work of her husband.
Now, Yuri, how will these words be received by the Russian political opposition?
Well, Gerhard, if you consider that the Russian political opposition has been divided for years and has no united voice, also because, by the way, of Navalny's rejecting attitude in the past, if you consider that there are apparently no other instruments for the political opposition in Russia at the moment, apart from, let's say, making speeches from abroad, if you consider that almost every critical statement about official Russian policy can or could be prosecuted and punished in Russia itself, then the Russian political opposition must or can be satisfied or happy with Yulia Navalnaya's speech today because she gave the opposition a voice, a face, and she didn't put her life or her freedom or the lives or freedom of the others at risk. So as pure symbolic politics, this was, of course, the strongest moment for the Russian opposition in years. And yes, Yulia Navalnaya's speech has probably made one or the other Putin supporter in the European Parliament think or change their mind. The concrete effect of this speech in Russia itself is something different.
Bernd, Yuri just mentioned it. How has this speech been received in Strasbourg by European parliamentarians? Does it make a difference? Do people have changed their minds?
Well, the overwhelming majority of the deputies here is supporting Navalny's and his widow's cause. They say Putin is our enemy. Russia has to be freed of him. We have to help the opposition. This is the majority, but the means that the parliament has to do that are limited. They also need the institutions in Brussels, like the EU Commission and, of course, the member states that are deciding upon sanctions and that actually deciding on foreign policies. So it's a show of support here, but the parliament as such is not very powerful in these matters. Of course, the parliament is also asking to blame Putin himself for the death of Navalny and try to hammer out some sanctions targeting him and the possible perpetrators. But in the end, it's upon the member states to do more. Navalny published a list of 6,000 people in Russia that are supporting Putin economically and in this alleged mafia circle. Only 1,100 are under sanctions as of now, so there's lots of things that could be done, and we have to wait and see if in the next weeks the member states will take up this and act on it. Also depending, of course, on the so-called elections in Russia coming up in March. That will be also maybe a chance to talk about Russia and to do something about Russia again.
Yuri, Alexei Navalny's funeral will be held on Friday in Moscow. What can you tell us about that?
Well, we don't have that many details, Gerhard. We have known for about an hour from Alexei Navalny's press secretary, Kira Yarmysh, that her husband Alexei will be buried on Friday at noon at the Marino Cemetery, which is a district of Moscow. There will be a church ceremony before the funeral. It's supposed to be a small ceremony. That is allegedly the condition of the Russian authorities. According to media reports, they also gave to the same condition on his mother a few days ago. Initially, Navalny's colleagues wanted a large ceremony so that as many people as possible could pay their last respects to him, but they were unable to find a proper hall for it. Also, the ceremony was originally supposed to take place tomorrow on Thursday, but tomorrow President Putin will give his speech to the nation.
Yuri, Yulia Navalnaya also mentioned that that funeral might not be entirely peaceful. What can you say about that?
Well, Yulia Navalnaya's speech will certainly not have a major impact on the outcome of the election in 2 weeks' time. Today's speech is unlikely to have a major impact on Putin's popularity. His personal popularity ratings are currently around 65%, and around 80% of Russians are generally satisfied with his policies. This is data from the independent research institute Levada Center, and I don't think it will change much after today's session at the Euro Parliament. I suppose many will not even have heard about it, but this speech today was a strong signal of support for all those in Russia who don't agree with Vladimir Putin's policies, and that is at least the remaining 20%, which is 20 million people. The problem is that many people in Russia traditionally do not go to the polls, and their votes don't decide the outcome of the election. Nevertheless, for those who still consider Russia to be a European country with European values, this was a powerful symbol today. However, it will probably not have any concrete practical consequences for Russian politics or the election in Russia.
Yuri Resheta there in Riga and Bernd Riegert in Strasbourg. Thank you both very much. You're watching DW News. Let's come to some other news now. Israel and Hamas have played down the chances